his name means troublemaker, his actual African name. And I
Yeah.
said, oh, absolutely. We've got to dig into that.
I'm Tim Malloy with Movie Maker. Very excited to be talking today with Antoine Fuqua, director of such films as Training Day and the Equalizer series. Today he's talking about his new film, Troublemaker, a documentary about the life of Nelson Mandela, the South African leader who spent 27 years in prison for standing up to South Africa's white apartheid regime and was finally released in the early 90s when he became the president of South Africa. Antoine Fuqua made this film in collaboration with Mac Maharaj, one of the men who was imprisoned on Robben Island with Nelson Mandela. And now, here's Antoine Fuqua talking about Troublemaker, which just premiered at the Sundance Film Festival. This film is built around some really astonishing audio tapes that Nelson Mandela recorded when he was working on his memoir, Long Walk to Freedom. How did you come to access these tapes and get permission to use them in the film?
When I got involved, I sat and listened to, I don't know, 70 hours of tapes, and it took a long time, believe me. And it was pretty fascinating. But yeah, that's how I got involved. I guess the tapes is something that they belong to the public, they're public domain. But this particular interview, I believe a lot of it was never heard before.
Did you hear anything in the interview that just really surprised you that you didn't realize about him before?
Yeah, many things. The most important thing I learned about Nelson Mandela was how the tapes humanized him for me. To hear his voice discuss these things, to hear him talk about his father passing, or the idea that he was sent to live with the king, as a boy, and then when his mother passed, Robben Island was really shocking for me. They erased his life for 27 years. To hear Mandela discuss these things. One of the things, though, Tim, I think the most important thing I want to make sure is clear is that I never could imagine coming out being so positive and so full of love
Yeah.
after going through all that.
It's astonishing. I mean, I want to ask how he persevered, but I also can't imagine how he kept himself mentally straight enough to go through that and come out with the approach that he did. Like almost the anger had dissipated and was replaced by wisdom.
Yes, 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 exactly.
He had a journey for sure. And as an American, I've kind of brought up on this idea that all equality is the wrong word, but all attempts at equality, all civil rights progress has come about through peaceful protest and passive resistance. And something that I was surprised about is that Nelson Mandela in the 60s was not a pacifist. He was willing to take up arms if he needed to, or to
Yes.
support those who were. Were you surprised by that?
That was the biggest surprise. That was the
Hmm.
biggest surprise because when you think about Nelson Mandela as this iconic figure, you don't realize that he didn't become an iconic figure or even a leader by avoiding conflict. In fact, he ran towards it and was willing to actually engage in it. Uh, but then, the better wisdom, thank God, was peace and communication and finding another way. I was surprised by that. I had no idea. In fact, the idea of troublemaker, when I walked into a restaurant, Tim, and it was this giant poster, and one of my other heroes is Muhammad Ali. And I see this guy there, and I was like, oh, Muhammad Ali. And he goes, that's Mandela. I was like, Mandela was a boxer? What? I had no idea he was a fighter. But then I said he was a rascal, man. He was something else. And then one of the guys said, well, his name, when we went back through the tapes, means troublemaker, his actual African name. And I
Yeah.
said, oh, absolutely. We've got to dig into that.
When I was watching, especially the section on him in Robben Island and all of the resistance that they were able to carry out behind bars and all of the strategizing they were able to do,
Mm.
and the work that they're able to do to plan for their future that they didn't know if they would ever be released. I thought was absolutely fascinating. Is that something that you've considered making a narrative film about, or is there any aspect of Nelson Mandela's life that you'd like to make a narrative film about?
It's funny you asked that question. Yeah, that's come up quite a bit while we were there about him and Mac Maharaj.
Yeah,
Like, because Mac's from India, and the whole idea that a lot of the Indians were there,
yeah,
when they were trying to get cheaper labor or different labor, they were bringing the Indians in.
yeah.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about that.
It's fun to cast it to imagine who could play those roles. I mean, it sounds like a
Sounds like
it
a good
sounds like
one,
an
right?
amazing film.
I agree.
Um, do you think there are Nelson Mandelas today, or people who can become Nelson Mandela or like Nelson Mandela, or is he just a one of a kind historical figure who we'll never see the likes of again?
That's a really good question. Um, I would like to believe that there are people out here. I like to believe that we as human beings have it in us. You, me, right? We just don't know until we're put under pressure how we're going to respond. And but I do believe there's some great people in the world that can make great change. I do.
Yeah. Uh, what are your hopes for this film?
I'm hoping that globally people will take it in and watch the film and learn more about Mandela and take his lessons and put them to work into the world, right? Take his lessons of leadership, put them to work into the world, and not to be so hard on yourself because sometimes we look at icons like Mandela, Ali, whoever your hero is that's done good things, great things, and we forget the human side of them. I think that you could take the lesson that you're a human being and you're allowed to be flawed. It's just what you do with your life. The by the end of your life, who did you help, right? Besides yourself, what did you do to bring light into someone else's life? And I think that's what Mandela was all about.